King of Podcasts, proudly presents The Broadcasters Podcast, a weekly media commentary talking about traditional and digital media headlines and talking to the content creators out front and behind the scenes. Now please welcome your host, a traditional and digital media professional with over 25 years of experience, including the last 15 years in podcasting. Here is the King of Podcasts. I truly amaze my times because of how much podcasting I do on a regular basis. But here I am. This is the second standalone podcast series that I have started. I've been doing the Wrestling Is Real podcast for now 502 episodes. I started that up in December of 2012. And it's always around this time of year where I said, let me go ahead and start up another podcast. And I decided to do that 2 years ago. And at the first moment I had in 2018, I decided to go and start this podcast. Well, here I am 100 episodes later. That's right. I didn't think I was going to get this. Really, the time of doing 100 podcasts really just came by so quick. Didn't miss a week. I think I'm going to miss 1 week in the whole time. But for the most part, we're here. And I'll tell you, I'm so thankful for all the people that I've had on as guests here on the program. I've had some wonderful people. I've had a really great experience so far, talking to the people here and getting a platform that I thought was very specific. When I first started the show, I called it Creative, Not Corporate, and I was trying to find where I wanted to go with how I wanted to craft this show. I wanted it to be a podcast that was going to be about the media, and I was going to talk about music, movies, TV, and radio. Not in that particular form, but radio was always my first thing, and I had tested doing this kind of show very early on when I first started doing the idea of a podcast series of my own in 2012. And I said, well, I'm going to test it out. I put a couple different things out there, and I said, you know what? I'm going to do wrestling for now because I wasn't ready to put myself out there to do the kind of show I've been doing now for the last 2 years. And I think I've got where I'm at. And listen, this is not like the over-the-top kind of thing. We're talking about show business. We're talking about the business of getting attention, entertainment, information through all different forms of media. That's what we're talking about here on the regular basis. And honestly, this show, if you notice, it's also a learning experience for me. And this is one thing about podcasts. I'm an expert when it comes to working in the TV industry because I worked in television news and I understand television. I followed ratings and I followed what shows are on TV and the networks and who's been on and whatnot. Movies I've been watching forever, and I'm a much more avid moviegoer than I ever was before. And I'm more the person where I like to watch movies when they happen, not so much when they're just out after a while. I like watching movies when they're brand new and catching them each and every week. And now I have a Regal Unlimited plan that allows me to do that. That's why I enjoy that so much. When it comes to radio, well, I always wanted to be in radio in the first place. And so I did that many moons ago because of the fact that I got to work in college radio over 25 years ago. And just getting behind the board, no matter how many people were listening to the station, the fact I got to go and play music, entertain audiences, and learn how to kind of work my way through was really fascinating, and I really enjoyed it. The other thing I also enjoyed, too, was learning about the music that's being played out there on all different formats I've gotten to play. I've gotten to understand rock and all the forms around rock, punk, ska, whatever there is, dance, breakbeat, jungle, goa, trance, house, all of that. It's so much different stuff out there. Trap, obviously, even that too. But then you also have to think about music that I have where it comes to like pop music and soul and rap and R&B and country and blues and all this. And just getting a reggae and getting all this encompassed in mind through all the work I got to do in radio. And then reggaeton and salsa and bachata and cumbia and, oh my God, all the different types of Mexican music from regional to banda to all of this. I've gotten the chance to, really absorb all of this different type of media. And now the change to digital. There's so much to be said about the digital transition of media these days and how much it has disrupted all forms of media altogether. And we're looking at it, and honestly, in the last couple of years doing the show, I think I caught it right around the right time where everything started making changes. We started seeing Netflix putting the biggest push on original content. Instead of not just taking their own content, they were just, okay, we delved ourselves into content, and over the last 5, 6, 7 years, they have gone full in on it. The same thing goes for Apple TV Plus. Now I know that Peacock is going to spend $2 billion on content as well. You have Hulu, you have Amazon Prime, all these different channels, all this different streaming media spending billions of dollars they probably don't have at the moment, but they're going to bet they're going to get that money back on the subscriptions and on the people they're going to have out there. And when you're seeing all the options being brought to the table, a la carte, they're all getting added. Disney Plus just got added. Peacock will be added in the March. And more will be coming. We're not even talking about the individual channels and the individual networks. But all this is happening now, and we're not seeing bundles as of yet. I have already said before, I have to expect that something's going to happen within all of the things going on with the cell phone companies, the smartphone companies, the smartphone providers. I'd imagine if they want to get something to go and go on that 4G, 5G signal, they want to keep people on the data stream and consumed with their content, so there's a worthy price value and a worthy price tag for them in order to keep people engaged and glued to their phones, and then make the phones better and offer it so that it has better streaming, better picture quality, better everything, better sound quality. That's all being worked out now, and that's what's happening. And the most important thing is the digital transition has created an ease as to which to consume your content. You are not beholden to watching on a television or listening on a radio or having a device like a DVR or a VHS player or a CD player or 8-track or cassette. Like all the devices that were out there, they're pretty much gone. I mean, there's not much of that at all left. So when you have all of that there, that's where we're at. And it's amazing. Amazing how we have everything going on right now when it comes to this disruption of media. And that's what we're going to be talking about going forward. And there's a couple of stories tonight that we're going to talk about that are definitely going to lead into that story. Let me go and give you a little lineup of what the program is about tonight. So trade unions are toughening up for talks. So many things are going on here. Let's bring it up. You have the WGA, the ATA, SAG-AFTRA, AMPTP. Who knows who else will be out there that will be in the trenches going into 2020 with trade talks, with union talks. Because negotiations, because of this disruption, has caused now labor unions. All the Hollywood trade unions are now at a point where their contracts are coming to a certain point, and here we are at 2020. Some of them are already coming up for expiration. We're going to talk about that. And we're going to continue to stay on this because I think it's something very important to keep people involved with and engaged on. Because the disruption of this digital media is creating a disruption on the institution of how content is being made. This is very important for all the content creators out there that I'm talking to on a regular basis. I think it's imperative that you are aware of the stories. I might not be the best person to report this, but at least I'm noticing the things that are going on out there and saying to myself, man, we have to keep an eye on what's going on here. There's a lot of things happening that people might not be looking at behind the scenes, but that's what the whole story is. It's all behind the scenes. It's not what the stars and the talent are doing. It's what is happening with the places that content creators must communicate with, who they have to communicate with, who they have to work and negotiate with. Those things are very important, and that's what's going on. Also, I'm going to look a little bit at the outlook for streaming media survival in 2020 because now we have all these new streaming media channels, what they're going to be doing. My point is, again, it's, you have a lot of corporate entities that are trying to get themselves into the digital race and saying to themselves, you know what? We're going to spend money that we don't have yet. And it doesn't matter. It's another corporatocracy, this whole idea where corporate radio went the same way. And, of course, I've talked about how we have companies that are in debt. How many times are people going to just do the same thing over and over again until they fail? they're all going to keep failing. That's all they want to keep doing. That's all that matters to them. And it's really stupid. But that's how they're going to handle things, period. Now, so Writers Guild of America has started contract talks as streaming pay takes center stage. And the writers are saying that the pay is not where it should be for themselves for the Writers Guild. Then we have issues with YouTube as there are impending problems for YouTube creators. I haven't brought this up much because it's mostly political, but I think there's a few things coming up in the new terms of service change for YouTube that's going to be things that people are going to have to worry about. Just keep in mind about. Now, I talked about payola on the program a few times over the last few months. Well, Spotify, according to a Rolling Stone report we're going to talk about, says they're walking the line between advertising and pay for play. So we'll have those stories coming up for you in just a few moments. And then after that, I will continue and conclude my interview with Brant Pinvidic. He's an award-winning film director, veteran TV producer turned entrepreneur, and C-level consultant. So he is one of Hollywood Reporter's 30 most powerful reality TV sellers, widely recognized as one of the most great creative sales leaders in Hollywood. I've mentioned already that he has a new book called The 3-Minute Rule, Say Less to Get More from Any Pitch or Presentation. I finished the book. I recommend it highly. And the way I listened to it was through Audible because Brent does the interview himself or does the book himself. Great storyteller. He really gets you everything down point. Put it like this. You're not waiting forever through the book to get what the 3-minute rule is. What he does, basically, he will give you the 3-minute rule about halfway through the book. You will already know what it is. And then he'll just continue to do things to help you enhance and perfect it. And that's what's very important. So the way he sets it up is actually very well crafted. I do like it. I like the way it was put up. So I got that coming up for you. We'll have that here on the program for all of you to go ahead and check out for yourselves. That'll be a little bit later on. So let's go ahead and move along and get started with the headlines this week, which start with, I'm going to start with from a site I have not seen before called StockDailyDish.com. For whoever it is, somebody contributed this story, and I thought, looking through a Google search, I thought it was a good place to go and start. Now, the Writers Guild of America starts a contract talks as streaming pay takes center stage. That's the story. Let's go ahead and take this story, which gives a lot of good context. What I'm really looking for, and we'll have this explanation. Plus, I have more from Deadline that has a new story about the WGA ATA talks as well. We'll talk about that next. So first, amid a tense labor atmosphere in Hollywood, the Writers Guild of America began contract negotiations on Monday in what is expected to be a tough round of talks as the industry continues to grapple with digital upheaval. The Writers Guild of America counts about 13,000 members between its East and West Coast guilds. We'll be sitting down at the AMPTP headquarters, the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers in Sherman Oaks, California, which represents the major studios, TV networks, and independent producers. Now, the closed-door talks will focus on a new contract to replace the current 3-year agreement. What was reached in 2014 expires May 1st of 2020. So again, we already know the standoff where there is lawsuits still in place right now with the Writers Guild and the Association of Talent Agents against the 3 of the top agencies. That is still in play. Now you have the Writers Guild now negotiating with the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. So the studios, the networks, the producers. Now they're into the talks as well, where the Writers Guild are defending themselves and not with the representation of the ATA, as if basically the ATA wants to go ahead and get themselves out. Now, experts say the residual payments related to streaming services like Netflix, Amazon, and Hulu are likely to be among the biggest points of discussion in the days ahead. Therefore, this is what I talked about before. Digital disruption, or they call it digital upheaval in this story. So the Netflix, Amazon, Hulu's, Disney Pluses of the world, yes, the money they're putting in the content, they have to kick back to the writers. Then, in the content they're doing, that they're spending money on, that part of that money has to go to those people, those content creators. That's what the problem is. And it's a lot of money they're going to be asking for because they know what they expect normally from what they're doing now. Therefore, guilds like the WGA want to, quote, make sure their members are being paid in a way that's commensurate with the money studios are making off of streaming video. This is according to Dan Stone, attorney at Greenberg Glesker, who specializes in entertainment and media. Now, Stone also previously served as Assistant General Counsel at the Directors Guild of America, the WGA. With traditional movie and TV distribution, there was a certain level of financial transparency that enabled unions to work out residual payments with the studios. But that transparency hasn't been there for the streaming services. It's mostly subscription driven, so it's been difficult for the guilds to come up with a residuals formula. You never know what's going on inside the room. But the WGA seems to have been signaling to its membership that it's willing to go to the mat on this issue. Now, and keep this in mind, that the Netflix and Hulus and the Amazons of the world have been doing separate negotiations with the writers, where they have not included these studios or whatnot, or they've all been individually fixed here. But now they're going to have to be brought into the full mix of the trade unions and making their deals possible. So the subject of streaming residuals is also expected to take center stage when SAG-AFTRA begins their own contract negotiations in the spring of 2020. Again, these are all happening at the same time. So for the fact that the WGA, who are initially the people that started the standoff in the first place, the ATA didn't care. The talent agents would have kept packaging the way they were keeping things the way before, because it didn't matter what, if they were pitching to a streaming media studio or if they were pitching to a network or cable or whatever. They didn't care. There was still some other media outlet they could pitch to. So the talent agents didn't care. But the writers definitely feel like this is, again, as the story says, they're going to go to the mat on this issue for their membership because they want to change the way things are, because this digital disruption allows a disruption for them. Now, you have to ask yourself, is this gamble good enough for them to make that they're going to be able to get a payoff from it? Not pun intended. Are they going to get paid well as a result of this? Or will this be something that will risk them being hurt? And most importantly, what kind of a standoff will we have here? How long will picket lines actually happen? Will we get that in 2020? Will people really not want to go ahead and take Ford? We don't know yet. And that's where people need to go and find out. Now, therefore, in the tight-knit world of Hollywood labor, the major guilds often take cues from each other in what is called pattern bargaining, where one union uses the gains of another as leverage. For film and TV writers, the current atmosphere is rather anxious, as many worry about their economic future. Now, this is from David Smith. He's associate professor of economics at the Pepperdine Graziato School of Business and Management. He says this, quote, "My sense is that they're frustrated in light of stagnant to moderate earnings over the years compared to pretty healthy profit margins from major studios. It's important for writers to have any threat of a strike be credible. Some of it is posturing, but there is legitimate concern." Very well said by Professor Smith, because they are trying to see what they can do with this. But will they just be peacocking themselves? Are they just trying to go ahead and are they bluffing? That's the point. And the fact that they have held how they have basically have been able to hold on so hard with what they've been doing. Think about this. When it comes to how hard they've been pushing back now with the ATA, tells you this is not much of a bluff anymore. This is the real deal. There's real negotiations that are going to be had here. This is not going to be an easy fix. The ATA the Writers Guild has gone to lawsuit, so they obviously see what's going on there. Now, Smith also added that the WGA negotiations are likely to feature discussion of its pension plan. So representatives declined requests for comment in this story. The last major Writers Guild strike was 2007-2008. It lasted 100 days, paralyzed much of the industry. And you might not remember that the work stoppage affected movie and TV production, took a celebrity dimension when a number of actors and TV personalities joined the screenwriters on the picket lines as a show of solidarity. I remember that happening. And what you don't realize is we used to have a time where more movies and more TV shows were being cranked out. More content was actually happening. Remember, we used to have more than multiple movies coming out each week in the theaters. Many more. But that really came down. You notice there are some weeks where we might not even get a good major release because there's not enough movies that are coming out that are majorly released because of what happened. There are still after effects of this 2007-2008 walkout. We are now back to it again. Now, the longest walkout in the Guild's history was this 1988 strike. It lasted 155 days. Now, yes, there are things that can be done to help with this. One of the things we talked about last week was the fact that the movie network TV studios, they all actually had a lot of content they had put together that was already signed off to go into projects. They already had approved projects, but they did not greenlight production on those. So they have projects right now they already have the rights to that they can go ahead and greenlight and work off of. They have a stockpile of it because they were prepared for this very scenario. They were all prepared for it. So there are projects and movies that'll keep talent, writers, creators all happy and keep them moving. Meanwhile, then the strike will continue, but it'll be affecting on all different areas of the trade unions. So the labor will all be affected. WGA, AMPTP, the ASTSC, you got SAG-AFTRA, you got all these different labor unions that are all about this. I know that the AMPTP are trying to go and set up things to really kind of hedge off any further issues so that the pattern bargaining will happen as it normally goes in traditional mention of how this is according to the article and see what it does. So now the contracts talks are nearing. Let's go to what is being said by Deadline.com. They said the WGA West reports there is a record employment of members, which is a good thing. A lot of writers are getting fed. They are getting paid. You know, they're getting work. But writers still say pay is not where it should be. Now, the story from Deadline talking about the employment, we're going to move off of that. We mentioned the story about how they want to go and work about pension. There was an email from David Goodman, the WGA West president, or vice president, secretary treasurer, that the Guild's negotiating committee was going to meet to review preliminary results of a survey that was sent to members last month, asking them to prioritize the issues they would most likely have addressed during negotiations. So in January, the membership, according to the Guild leaders, will have the opportunity to vote on a pattern of demands. And following that, member meetings will be convened for the committee to lay out initial proposals and get feedback. Now, the date has actually been set for the contract talks with the AMPTP. We're waiting on that. But that's coming up in January, most likely. We'll get those talks. I already know that they already brought legal counsel in place. Mediation's all set to go. Negotiations will get coming up soon. We'll keep an eye on that. It'll most likely be after the holidays. So that's very important. Now, moving on to streaming services, the future of television. Because no matter what's going on here with the unions and the talent and all this other stuff going on, most importantly is to keep an eye on a couple things. Number one is that things are happening like how they're happening right now with SAG-AFTRA, with WGA ATA. The agents, the writers, they're still in their standoff. The studios, the producers, the networks, they're all coming in to negotiate next to get their contracts set before May 1st. And then by that point, SAG-AFTRA, that's the talent. That's all going to be next. So that all has to get taken care of so that there is not this domino effect of shutdown across the board of all of our entertainment, because that's going to be a problem. Because, yeah, you know, the network studios and the producers are all kind of like set. They got a backup plan going in place, sure. But it doesn't mean that there's not going to be effects that are going to be brought in place after the fact. And that's what the biggest problem there is. Keep that in mind. Now, streaming media itself, streaming services. I go to a story from Tufts Now, which is a blog. It's now.tufts, tufts.edu. They wrote an article entitled, What Streaming Services Mean for the Future of Television. By the way, all these articles, you can find them linked on the website, broadcasterspodcast.com, underneath the show. So look for the show notes. I always put those there for all of you to check out. Now, consumers will watch more content, according to the subheading of this article, with more diverse voices, but probably won't save any money by eschewing cable. So that's the biggest problem. You're going to have new options now for people to go ahead and consume content. But that's the one thing that's being very importantly said. people are cutting the cord on cable when the truth is they're not going to save any money by doing it. So the digital outlets, they're charging more or less for the same kind of content that you wanted. People thought they were going to be cutting the cord to get a more viable alternative. Well, no. You're not going to get a more viable, affordable alternative. No. What you are going to get, okay, you probably will get more in terms of getting together, I think you'll probably get a better choice of content. So you can pick and choose more a la carte. And I think for some people that's fine. I think that's probably what the better advantage is. But to say it's going to be less, no, that probably wasn't going to be that way. I kind of figured it would be like that too. But anyway, Angela Nelson writes, it's a competitive industry in which subscription-based streaming services like Hulu, Netflix, Apple TV, and Amazon Prime aren't just competing with each other, but against cable, broadcast, and satellite television too, for viewers' dollars and the most compelling content. Now, Tasha Oren is an associate professor of film and media studies at Tufts University, and she was asked in a Q&A about a couple different things. So first, about the trend of media companies launching their own streaming services. How will this a la carte approach to television affect consumers in the industry? Professor Oren says, cable's going to suffer because of the main reason people still watch a lot of cable is for live shows such as news and sports. Once there is a way to unbundle that, once these services figure out how to include live sports and live news, basic cable's in trouble. And like we're seeing with network, individual channels and content will migrate to streaming options. The bigger thing that's happening is a walled garden and re-entrenchment of a lot of owned properties. You're going to see a lot of closed and branded ecosystems. Pardon, the Skype just went off for a minute there. Back to the story here. Now, you're going to see a lot of closed and branded ecosystems. So large conglomerates like Disney Plus are going to show you only what they own. Disney, Marvel Films, Disney Productions. And like it, others will be using their properties to create new shows within the same story universe that they already own. We're going to see more of that with CBS too. And more TV is going to be rebranded this way. I don't know if that's going to be good or not, but I get what they're trying to do. Now, Netflix is preparing for that. There used to be a platform where you saw television from a lot of different networks that give you a real feel of what's out there. Now, many of those companies are pulling away their rights so they can create their own streaming services. If you go to the Netflix homepage, they're not just pushing personalized content. Now they're pushing original Netflix shows because they know most of what they don't own will be going. So they've prepared for it, and that's very well said. And they have to see if, with the changes they made and the amount of money they put into it and the money they have accrued of debt, are they going to be able to hold on to what they have? That's the biggest portion. Now, when it comes to online, not so much streaming, but let's talk about just the internet itself. Social media outlets are entering the streaming area. Instagram has IGTV. Snapchat has Snap Originals. Facebook has Facebook Watch. Are these disruptors at all? And Professor Oren says that they're not quite there yet, but it's actually a very good thing. Social media makes it possible for smaller talents to grow in a grassroots way and become something that a big streaming network will notice and pick up. And that stars in social media are being mined for content as we speak. As you see, Lily Singh came from YouTube, and now she's on NBC doing her own late night show. Issa Rae has her show called Insecure, or she does High Maintenance. Those shows started kind of small online, but we're going to see more social media stars get bigger with bigger audiences and streaming services plucking new talent and giving them a national platform. The problem I have a problem with this is that the smaller talent, these smaller grassroots talent, are going to be the ones that people are going to be picked at for recruiting when they're not well positioned. When I think, you work better with a bigger audience when you're in radio and you really have to perform. And you got to do it live and when it's happening, not when it's scripted and pre-recorded and you have time to go and put it together. For my own sake, when I do this, I'm not worried so much about it because I normally go through and when I prepare a show, I got my notes here, but I'm recording it in one shot. I am not going back, re-recording something and starting it over again. No, I never do that. I prefer to go ahead and continue to go ahead and go over and over and okay, we're going to just go straight through because I did radio before. So I was prepared to go ahead and do this and go through a regular session and go through what I want to do. And that's fine. And I'm actually really fine about that. I'm content that way. Anyway, there's more to the story, but that's what I wanted to get to. Now, we mentioned the online services. One of those places is YouTube. Let's go along and segue into that story. YouTube now, there's impending problems, according to a story from Hypebot.com I'm going to read from. Music 3.0's Bobby Ozwinski writes that if you depend on YouTube for all of your social interaction and audience outreach, things might get a little tougher in 2020. So here's what's happening so far. New terms of service are coming into place that YouTube creators must adhere to. I know that because I'm one. I'm not a big player in this, and I don't make any money off of YouTube, but I'm trying to build a channel because it's another place to put my content. It would only be right for me to go ahead and put my content there. So all of my episodes of the Broadcasters Podcast and Creative Not Corporate, plus the last 2 years of my Wrestling is Real podcast and my umbrella podcast when I'm not podcasting, it's all up there, youtube.com/jbrasco951. You can find a link on the website, broadcasterspodcast.com. But again, if you're looking for it, just do a search for King of Podcasts on YouTube, or you can look for youtube.com/J, B as in boy, R as in Ralph, A as in Apple, S as in Sam, C as in Charlie, O as in Omega, 951, right there. Check that out. So accounts are being deleted. YouTube recently announced that it changed its terms of service and will begin to delete accounts that are deemed no longer commercially viable. That basically means that if it can't make money on you, then it's not interested in having you on the platform. It pertains to accounts that don't have a lot of subscribers, which are now subject to being deleted. It also means that YouTube has the power to delete a creator's account if they upload or live stream video, then that might not pull enough advertising revenue. So in that case, I get it. They need to do something to, make it where people are watching the programming. So for me, it's important because, listen, I don't have a big amount of people. I get that part. And so hopefully I'm trying to build what I'm doing on there to get more people on board. I don't care if they're making money off of me. They should. So hopefully they are, and hopefully they don't decide to take my channel away. So far, nothing's happened. Children labeling. Well, YouTube began requiring creators to label their videos if they might appeal to children. Well, for my own sake, I'm going to just say, because I might apparently throw an expletive out here and there on any of my podcasts, and some of my content might be adult in nature because I'm really not talking to kids. Well, if you're going to listen to it, if it's a child listening to this program that might be in the teens, early, late teens, they might want to listen to it. Yeah, listen with an adult, or just don't, parental discretion advised. Might as well play that role better and just be safer about it. So I labeled all of my YouTube content over 18. I don't care. That's fine. That's totally okay if I do that. I really don't worry about the fact that I'm going to have some loss of audience as a result. They're not going to make me any money anyway. Nothing against them. And the worry is that if you fail to fully comply with the Made for Kids mandate, the burden is on you. Liability can be as high as $42,000 per mislabeled video. So they all have to be over 18. If you are expletives, sexual content, things like that. And I understand that. Also, be careful of the music that you use. Creators are now discovering music that they thought was royalty free was actually not. There are now copyright strikes against them to get their channel demonetized. So you have to be careful of the music you use, even if it's your own. The reason is why your label publisher or the publisher of a co-writer, especially, can issue an automatic copyright warning without a human being involved making a connection that the use is actually authorized. Now, if you notice on this program, I use instrumentals of songs that are popular, that are current in the culture. I usually do that. Chart-topping songs, but I don't play the actual song itself. And what has happened with YouTube is that they find a song, if they hear a little bit of the song in the mix, then yeah, they do get me for a copyright violation. Oh, well, I understand. They did that last week when I put, Blinding Lights from The Weeknd into my mix underneath the bed. So I have to do a little adjustment so it doesn't get so as commonly noticed. So I have to do a little adjustment to my opener so I don't get so caught up, because I know what happened was I picked an instrumental, but because of the part I picked, it was long enough for it to be copyrighted. So I know exactly what I got to do this time around, and I'll take care of that coming up now. That'll be easy to go and take care of. Meantime, So YouTube is now on big time cover your ass mode, and that means that more concerns for creators in general. Be careful out there. Very well said in this story. He's right. And, it's these kind of things that people have to worry about. And you know what? I guess for them to decide to go and make this change now at the end of the year, when the content creators probably have more time to go ahead and do a little bit of housekeeping through their own content, then they can take time to go through all their content. And honestly, I'll give credit to YouTube. At least they make it really easy to bulk all your content and have it labeled a certain way so you can do that. I figured just do it like that, make it easier for me, and just be a little more careful of what I do with my content, because I'm not looking to go ahead and ruffle any feathers. I want people to have another place to listen to it. But initially, the podcast is what's important. That's what matters to me. Okay, we're going to leave it there. Time for me to go ahead and introduce my guest for part 2 of my interview. We talked about him. He used to run the TLC network. Oh, I had one more story to talk about. Hold on, let's do that real quick. Spotify walks the line between advertising and pay for play. Let's talk about that real quick. So, confidential documents obtained by Rolling Stone. Spotify's new advertising tool promises extra listeners to the artists or labels that can afford it. So, Spotify in October introduced a new option for labels that allows them to pay to drive incremental streams to their artists. It's a centerpiece of the advertising initiative called Marquee. Labels can now purchase a pop-up ad prompting users to listen to Taylor Swift's Lover, for example, on release day. According to confidential documents obtained by Rolling Stone, every time a Spotify user clicks on one of these advertisements, the label will fork over 55 cents per click. The labels hope curious clickers will then hit play on the advertised music, helping artists bolster their stream counts. Now, Spotify's pitch deck, which was sent to a distribution company, the platform advises artists or labels that must spend at least $5,000 on these campaigns. If an artist pays that amount of 55 cents a click, the campaign should bring in more than 9,000 potential listeners over a 7-day period. Now, George Howard, professor of music business and management at Berklee College of Music, says, Spotify is saying, we want you to pay us to display your records. All this does is continue what payola has always done. The major labels, which have the most money and the most frequent releases, get the most play, consolidating the amount of art that is put out there. And there you go. Comparisons to pay for play for radio, and it's happening to Spotify. How about that? But Spotify is doing this to get more money coming into their product. Spotify became public in 2018. Pressure to become profitable has become more. They've been sporadically in the black since the last quarter of 2018, so they're finding new ways of generating revenue. So if they're going to have to go to payola, I understand how they're doing it here, and if it works for them, maybe radio needs to kind of take something out of that as well, because at least Spotify gives you an open place to go and pay to play. Everybody can pay to play. Radio, you can't pay to play. That's the problem. There we go. Keep that in mind. So with that said, now it's time to go and get into my interview, conclude my interview with Brant Pinvidic, award-winning film director, veteran TV producer, C-level sales and presentations coach, keynote speaker, top-rated podcast host, and a columnist for Forbes magazine. He used to run the TLC network. He's run and managed Streetball Entertainment, which has brought shows to us like Bar Rescue, Beauty and the Geek, The Biggest Loser, and Extreme Makeover Weight Loss Edition. He's also the author of the book, The 3-Minute Rule, Say Less to Get More from Any Pitch or Presentation. I conclude my interview now with Brant Pinvidic here on the Broadcasters Podcast. All right, I want to go along and talk more about the celebrity CEO idea. You spoke with fellow entrepreneur Grant Cardone in that same article, which you said was in Forbes as well. You published it. And he said this about this. Quote, the old saying goes, people do business with people they trust. But now with social media, the saying should be, people do business with people they know. People know me, and right now that's more important than whether they like me. If they don't like me, they can still choose to do business with me. If they don't know me, I have no chance. End quote. Do you feel like television is starting to lose its role as the medium that people want to be seen on?
Yes and no, because television, again, still has that barrier to entry. And I always say, like, Anthony Bourdain, God rest his soul, a friend of mine, he never was on a television show that had more than 1 million viewers.
Wow.
Like, not once. And he was a household name everywhere. Whereas one of my friends is a comedian named King Batch, and he gets, and I mean millions and millions of views of every single video he puts out basically every day. And yet he struggles for name recognition. It's, he's not like a red carpet phenomenon. You can't go through the pages of People magazine and see him sort of pumping gas and being like, stars are celebrities too, or celebrities are people too. Like, it's a weird thing that someone who has that much reach and connection doesn't have the same perception of celebrity that somebody like Anthony Bourdain or an actor who's in one movie has this level of celebrity, right? And so TV still gives you that piece. If you have a talk show, if you have your own TV show, if you're on stuff, it still has this layer of credibility that people respect. And then you can use that to further the other pieces of your business. You can't do it all on your own on TV, but TV elevates you to a completely different level still today.
I think, and I like how you say that, because for me, I like to think that there's a bit of a parallel. I think there's those that want to be popular online and those that would be popular in television, because I think there's a difference between if you're a celebrity or if you're just some kind of figure, do you want to be on Jimmy Fallon or do you want to be on Joe Rogan? It's kind of that dynamic. Do you agree?
Yeah, but the idea is if you can get on Jimmy Fallon, you get on Joe Rogan. If you get on Joe Rogan, you ain't getting on Jimmy Fallon. So you want both. And that's the key, is you want both. And then you got to listen, I do a lot of consulting with a lot of companies, and a lot of them want to know, how do I grow my following? How do I get that kind of stuff? And it's like, okay, but what would you use that for? That's the other thing, is like, okay, so you get a big following and you become sort of celebrity CEO and you have that thing. Well, what are you actually turning? And people have been looking at my sort of micro celebrity goofy system that I have. And it's like, oh, I don't know what I want to sell yet. Like, right. This book is the first time I've ever actually had something to reach out to my audience and be like, hey, will you buy it? But not everybody who follows me is going to need the book, want the book, think it's great. I think it's great for everybody. Let's just start there. But I don't know why I would continue past this book thing to try to market to my following, because I don't know that that's the consumer. Like, a lot of the people who follow me can't afford to hire me. So why would I be spending so much time and energy trying to be popular within that following or grow that if it's not part of my core business? And that's where a lot of these people get sucked in and caught up, is it's like, well, who are you talking to? Like, who are you who are you actually going to do business with? And are you talking to those same people, or are you using that as social proof to then go to the real people? And that's sort of what I'm doing now, is like, I have a lot of celebrity sort of coaching clients that I help with strategy and whatnot, but I can't charge them, and that's fine, because I use that as sort of leverage and credibility to land the big clients and the big companies and the big CEOs who can't afford my fees. So I don't put a lot of content out in that world to my core following, because I'm not trying to sell them things.
But do you think ultimately, with all the content you put out and the generosity you make of your time, ultimately, do you feel like if you are becoming a celebrity CEO, you need to identify what is that one thing you want to monetize? What is that one brand that you're trying to create that you want people to go ahead and attach themselves to? Absolutely.
And the problem is that people want content. They don't want promotion. And people use the word content so much. Right. And it's like, that's not content. That's promotional. You're just promoting something.
Yeah.
Content is something you do for the entertainment of others. So I ask anybody listening on their feed and what they're doing, like, go through your posts and tell me which ones are actually there to entertain an audience and which ones are to promote something for yourself. And like, be honest. Most people are like 90%. It's all promoting their thing or trying to make them look good. And listen, I'm guilty of that too. I have a lot of actual content where I do it just for the enjoyment of my following, because it's fun. But there's, especially now with the book, there's a ton of promotional stuff on there. And a lot of it is like, hey, look how cool I am. Oh, yeah, I got cool friends. Oh, I'm doing cool things. Well, because it's like, I'm trying to elevate a little bit to try to sell more books.
Yeah.
And you can see that. And listen, I don't tell a lot of people this, but here's everybody in your audience. Like, my engagement numbers right now on my Instagram and Facebook are down, because the last 3 weeks I've been in a full promotional cycle for the book launch tomorrow, basically. So, like, I can feel it. People are like skipping my Instagram stories because it's like, oh, there's his book again. There's his book again. It's like, well, they've already bought it or they know it, right?
Yeah.
And so Whereas before, like I was posting my horses or my adventure stuff or whatever was kind of cool and fun and interesting stories.
Right.
Now I'm promoting something and it's like a careening down a cliff, you know? And that's like, and I'm talking thousands difference, like a 30-40% drop off on my Instagram stories, just the stories.
Wow.
It's because I'm in promotion mode. And I'm trying really hard, by the way. Like if you go through my stories or you see my Instagram, like I'm trying to make content out of it and be funny and do different things. I'm not just like, please buy my book. I already said that a few times.
Right.
So it's now like, and I'm working my ass off to make this thing, to try to make it more content based, and it's still falling off.
That's tough. No, I totally get where you're coming from there. It's just, you have to, well, because then I've heard some people that in sales that have told me, well, listen, again, being honest with your audience, that was the one thing that's always told to me is that, well, look, you got to tell people, I'm trying to make a living off of this. I'm trying to make something out of this. So when you help me with this, whether it's a Patreon campaign or it's a service I'm trying to promote, remember, it's always helping out the show. So everybody I always hear that does pretty well. They're always trying to make that point and just say, well, it's just the honesty factor again.
Exactly. Just basically, and that's helped me too. Because I like when I was doing the marketing for the book, I've just been like, hey, I need to like get pre-orders in. So, because they count on Amazon a lot.
Agreed.
And that was basically my message. It wasn't like, oh, the book's going to do this or whatever. It's like, hey, I need pre-orders on Amazon because they count that. And it looks important. And I was the #1 new release because of the outreach of that. And it wasn't for any other reason that I specifically went to my audience. It was like, hey, I need some love. Here's where I need it. This is why I need it. Psst, done. And that worked really well. Whereas now I can see like, oh, since I've already asked that, now what am I promoting? What am I doing now? It's like, I'm trying to reach people who haven't heard me yet or seen me yet. My own audience already knows. If you follow me, I have a book coming out. Like, that's it. So you've either decided to buy it or you haven't bought it, or I've already signed one and sent it to you or whatever, right? I basically direct message everybody in my following almost. So
well, you already got me hooked. If the book is available on Audible, I'm totally in on this. And
the book is available on Audible. I read it myself. It was really cool.
All right. I think you would do great with that. So before I get a chance, we're going to bring it up later on at the end of the interview, but the 3-minute rule, say less to get more from any pitch or presentation, found on Amazon, all your bookstores. October 29th is the release date. Obviously, it'll be available for everybody that listens to the show because we're recording in advance. Published by Penguin Random House. So we'll bring that up in a few more minutes. But now back to, I want to talk about an article that you were quoted in by Fortune Magazine. There was about TED Talk strategies to be compelling at work. And you were one of the people who was asked about. You said this, quote, one misstep people make in persuasive communication is starting with a big claim to impress the target audience, whether it's a 300-person auditorium or a 9 a.m. at a manager's meeting. When you do that, you've immediately set up people to try to disprove what you said. For any content creators, and now that's end quote. For any content creators, producers, or directors, does the same apply to a pitch meeting in front of network brass?
Absolutely. Yeah. And when I was at the network, I'd have people come in and they'd start the meeting with like, I've got your next great hit show.
Wow.
Or I've got a show that's going to change the way this channel does this type of programming. Or I've got a show that's going to bring in more advertising dollars than any show you've ever had. And the second someone says that, it's not like an elevator pitch where you sort of like, you think they're going to lean in and be like, ooh, tell me more. No, it's the opposite. I lean out and I'd be like, please stop talking, right? And that's the reality of the world today. If you start with a grand conclusion, your audience is going to look to disprove it. That's the end of the story. So, and that's really the hook of your story. Normally, that's what I call the hook of the story, right? It's the cool part of the movie. It's the main theme of what you're trying to pitch, present, or sell. And so why people want to start with that up at the beginning and then try to prove it is hard for me to grasp. It's been done for the last 50 years. It's called state and prove, and it used to work. We used to state something. This is what this product did, and it's so amazing, and then I'm going to show and prove it to you. And that worked great when there was no access to information. When if I told you something, away this pen writes, and it writes for 4 miles continuously and never loses ink. It's like, what are you going to do? Run down to the library and open an encyclopedia and see if that's possible and run some trajectory tests? No. Whereas now, if I say something like that, you're already on your smartphone being like, distance pen can write, right? So it's like, It doesn't work anymore.
No.
Now what we do is what I teach is called the inform and lead process, which is I lead you with the information to a mutually assured conclusion. What your conclusion is and my conclusion should be the same thing. And when I was pitching Bar Rescue is a great example. I had John Taffer, who's a big personality, and my hook of that show was John Taffer is going to be the next Gordon Ramsay. He's the Gordon Ramsay for bars and restaurants. And that is a fact.
Yeah.
And it's proven that is what's happened. Now, at the time, if I would have walked into the network offices and went to the president of the network with John and be like, hey, we've got a great show to pitch you. It's with John Taffer. He's going to be the next Gordon Ramsay for bars and restaurants, right? Would they have been like, oh, I'm so excited. Let's hear it. They would have been like, oh, God. Rolling of the eyes, right? That's not what happens. So I went in there and I explained, here's Bar Rescue. Here's the idea of the show. I set up the world, bars and restaurants, how they're so relatable and everybody goes, all that kind of stuff. Then I explain how the show works, what we're going to do each week and why it's going to do. And then I talk about John's background and that he's been one of the foremost bar experts in the world and he's done all this kind of stuff and he's the passion and all that kind of stuff. And then I show clips of him doing what he does. And at about the 3-minute mark, the network president goes, oh, so he's like the Gordon Ramsay of bars and restaurants. So I informed the audience and led them to the grand conclusion. The grand conclusion is this guy's going to be a star and could be the next Gordon Ramsay. And that formula works really well for any pitch or presentation. You start with what you feel is your hook and you build the information to that hook. And I always ask people, like, how did you get involved? Why do you think your podcast is great? Why do you think people should be there? Why did you take this job? Why are you selling this thing? You've come to that information, that conclusion on your own through a series of events and information. You got to share that with your audience in the same kind of pattern so that at that moment, they feel the same way you do. They see your information the same way you do.
And on Bar Rescues, what a great example. Because, you have the Gordon Ramsays of the world or the Robert Erdvines of the world. And there's that kind of, you have to go and break that mold of like, okay, we see some certain shows before or they're coming out at the same time. And then John Taffer, Larger Than Life. I love that show, by the way. That's
yes,
fantastic. And by the way, I just noticed a story on here that was that of the bars and the restaurants that have been featured, you have a better success rate of the makeovers working for these places, which is the great part. I was like, wow, I can't believe you really do that.
Well, it's hard and we get lucky sometimes, but it's like anything. It's like change is difficult. Transformation doesn't stick all the time. So we've done really well with that show.
Absolutely. Now I would kind of ask you this too. Have you ever, there's one show I would always recommend to people if you like to get a little idea of the industry. I don't know if it's true or not, but I'd love to get your perspective. The show, the series episodes on Showtime, did you ever catch that show? And if you have, does it actually kind of relate to what you had to go through?
I mean, yes, it's like Entourage. It's taken right from the pages of our lives.
Right.
It's obviously, it's got a little dramatic effect to it. It's got bigger scenarios. But none of those storylines came out of the blue. They all come from personal experience from somebody and stories that are in there 100%.
Oh, my God. Honestly, I never watched Friends in my life, but Matt LeBlanc, so funny on that show.
Well, and I would say this. There are a lot of stories that wouldn't get into that show because people, even in that show, wouldn't think were real. That's how crazy some of the stuff is that happens around this town.
And I love shows like that. Kind of poke fun at the industry a little bit, have some fun with it. I thought that show was just so well made. It's honestly one of the most funniest shows I've ever seen. I lost it so many times watching that show. Now back to you've done a lot. You've obviously, like you said, promoting the book and getting yourself out there. You were on Jimmy Fox's Unscripted and Unprepared podcast, and the little time to do a little transcribing. And you mentioned that quote. You got the reputation of being pretty good in the room. And being able to sell a lot of stuff people wanted to hear because people wanted to hear my pitches. And that was because I developed a system of making it about the idea of delivering the information. And I found out really quickly that people respond to with the current state of the 6 month long, that people respond to, end quote. Sorry. With the current state of the 6 month long stalemate with the Writers Guild and the Association of Talent Agents in Hollywood, which I've talked about on this program quite extensively. Do you think that those making pitches for programming that need to learn your system, would it be best for them to go independent and make a better deal with agents and studios? I
mean, there's so much going on in that fight. It's hard to really, I'm not picking sides, that's for sure. And I'm not really even in the industry that much anymore, so I don't really care what they do. But listen, the agencies have a lot of power and they have a lot of juice. and the writers have more. And it's just hard. It's hard to get in the middle of those things. But yes, the core of the idea and what they're able to do and how they're represented is a big piece. And what I teach, and I have a lot of clients in that world, is if you make it about you, then people will judge you. If you make it about the idea, people will judge your idea. And that's really what you want, is you want a fast no. You want someone to say, okay, I got the idea. It's not for us, right? That's one of the, other than yes, we love it. That's the best answer you can get. And I've had tons of times where I'd be interviewing people for a job, or, having a producer come in and pitch me something, and they were so passionate about the idea that was bad that it started to make me think like, oh, if you think this is good, or you think this is what should be on television, like you're not suited for this job, or I don't ever want to hear your pitch again because you don't have any clue. And I pitched lots of bad ideas, but I leave it at the bad idea. And I sold, I'm not going to say a bad idea, but I sold a really wacky idea about celebrity diving. It was called Splash, and it was on ABC. And it turned out it was a hit. Our parent company in the Netherlands had sold it, and it was a big hit in the Netherlands. Wow. And so I had said, when we were talking about it, it's like, I can't go pitch Dancing with the Stars, but for diving. Like, that's just ridiculous. It's a goofy, ridiculous idea. We won't get anybody any real celebrities to cast in and jump off diving boards. Like, this is silly. But it was a big hit in overseas. So maybe that was somebody today, but we did have Circus of the Stars. We had somebody bowling back in the day. So you think I know we did Battle of the Network Stars, for Christ's sake. Listen, and that's what I did. So when I called the head of ABC, I literally said, "Listen, this idea is going to sound a little crazy. I can't believe I'm going to pitch this to you, but I have no choice because it's a huge hit in Europe, and there's just something about it which is so oddly compelling. It might work. And so here's the show. That's it." And so even if he would have said, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, we would have laughed and it wouldn't have affected me whatsoever. If I would have called and said, oh my God, I have the greatest idea. I'm so excited about this. This is going to change television and it's going to be a huge hit and you have to get it now. Otherwise I'm going to sell it to somebody else. And he might've been like, you thought that was going to be like, how embarrassed should you be? Right. So somewhere on that scale is usually where you and your information sit. And that's why I started always making it about the show. I didn't make it about me or trying to impress anybody with anything else, but here's the details of the show. And that actually had more of an effect and developed more of a personal reputation for me than trying to be all flashy and big and bold in the room.
That's fascinating. I've read a lot of books. I'm a big Audible guy. And one of the things I've been doing is, I read the self-help dating books. And they always, and when it comes to dating men or women, you'll get to the fast no. Get to the rejection as quick as you can. It's like same thing here. Yeah. It's amazing. It's something like that. But there's that part. And then also to unpack the part of, I bring up the question about the WGA ATA strike because I also think, the way this is going on, this was April it started. And we're still here. They're not even meeting right now to negotiate. So this is going to roll over next year. I know that the SAG-AFTRA sector is going to be also coming up to the same thing. They're waiting to see what happens with this. So there's going to be a whole lot of independent people out there vying for themselves, having to go ahead and reach the studios or the networks for everything. So they're going to have to fan for themselves. And I think, do you think there's a chance that the talent agents might just lose all their leverage altogether? Could that happen with this day and age? No, it's too difficult. You can go independent if you want, but the agencies have such connection and mass movement in their world and so much access to information that as soon as they get something that you need, they have the power. And I've done it. I've been independent before. When we had at 3Well, we were a big company and we decided we were going to go, quote unquote, unrepresented for a little while and shop all the agencies and use our power across everyone. And it was lasted for like a month and a half. And I was like, oh my God, this is so much work. I don't want to do this anymore. And I can imagine. If you're independent and smaller, you can't do it. There's no way. It's just too hard and it's just too difficult. To make any real dents. If you're a monster, if you're Sean Ryan, well, okay, you can do whatever you want because everybody wants your project. So they are a broker, they're a necessary broker, and it's a little bit like having a realtor for your house. Yep, you could sell your house online on your own, and people do it all the time, but it's just a lot of work and very difficult to do. So I think that it's a lot of posturing and
It will all get sorted. And as a consumer, who cares? Let them do whatever they're going to do. They'll figure it out.
Can somebody get on the phone with Sean Ryan and make him do another cop-based show? Because I love this show.
No kidding.
The Shield.
It's so funny. I saw him the other day, and I almost went and said that exact same thing. They're like, hey, listen, I don't want to talk to you about anything else. Can you just tell me when you're doing another Shield? Like, really?
Yes.
Like, honestly.
You know what? I thought Chicago Code was going to take off too. I really enjoyed it. And look where Jason Clarke, I guess the guy's name is, the main character. Look at where he took off. He's a big movie star now, and I'm like,
that's right.
He started there. I would have, and I watched it intensely. I'm like, they really pissed me off when they took that show off. But what can we do?
What can
it was
you
on
do?
Fox, wrong network, probably. That's what I think it was. It should have been a cable show. Just my
yeah.
Now,
yeah, it would have worked.
Let's talk about the book. You've taken your life, your business, storytelling lessons that you developed during your Hollywood career to bridge both business and showbiz entertainment industry and the business, the show business entertainment industry and the business community. The book, The 3-Minute Rule, Say Less to Get More from Any Pitch or Presentation. So, what are some of the takeaways that kind of give me a little bit of what the book's going to entail? The sections that if people are looking to go ahead and click on Amazon and say, okay, buy it. How would you persuade?
They should buy it. Look,
I'm
it's
going
basically
to.
That's right. It's the 3-minute rule, and the 3-minute rule says everything about your business, product, or service must be conveyed clearly, concisely, and accurately in 3 minutes or less. And in those first 3 minutes, it's really important that you capture and maintain your audience's attention. You create engagement with your audience directly so that you move to the next level. It's not about getting everything in those first 3 minutes. It's about getting what needs to be there so they have an understanding. And what I show in the book is how to use Hollywood storytelling techniques to lead your audience to the right conclusion. And the book really takes you step by step how to pitch or present or communicate anything of value to somebody else. And I'm really happy with it. It's gone really well so far. But the idea of simplification and simplifying your message is so powerful in the marketplace right now. And people are finding that, information is their value and clarity is really compelling. So the book takes you through a ton of fun, cool Hollywood stories, but really it's about the process of separating what you want to say from what needs to be said.
Fantastic. And honestly, like I said, I'm an Audible reader. I'm going to pick up the book. I'm going to look forward to hearing you the way you're speaking right now. I mean, it's exactly what you're going to hear in the Audible book. And with that, let's also go and direct listeners to your website, BrantPinvidic.com. That's BrantPinvidic.com. Let's talk about your current projects. Now, you just said earlier that you're starting your own podcast, the Why I'm Not podcast. You've also done several documentaries, Why I'm Not on Facebook and Why I'm Not on Pokemon Go. So talk to me about some of the things you're working on in terms of what's not the book.
Yeah, so I just started a new podcast called IPO, which is Ideas, People, and Opportunities They Create, where I'm interviewing some of the biggest business leaders and icons in the entrepreneurial community and really going through, when they had the big idea and what it took to get it to the next level, and then what the impact of that idea has become and the effect it's had on our culture. And so I'm having a really good time with that because I love the business community. It's really where my sort of heart and soul is right now. So it's been a good exercise to sort of take what I do in the business world from the speaking and consulting and whatnot and put it into something that I can share with the other sort of my fans and the other listeners out there. So it's been really, really exciting. I have a couple movie projects. I'm never going to be able to get away from the entertainment completely, but really the business side is just, it's so rewarding. And when I can get somebody to simplify their message and they can start to make other people see their idea the same way they do, it's really powerful. And as a guy who's kind of driven by ego, being important to people and changing their lives is it's kind of addictive.
This is amazing. Brant, thank you so much for being on the program. I'm really thankful to have you on. I can't believe I had you on. God,
listen,
dropping knowledge.
Promotion season. I'm out there. Yeah, so go to 3minuterule.com or BrantPinvidic.com, and I'm on all those social networks at Brant Pinvidic. So, and hopefully people will buy the book, and if they dig it, contact me.
We're going to make sure that the link is in the description for the show. We'll get it out there to people. Brant, I'm grateful to have you on the show. And we'll definitely, like I said, I'm going to get you over at Cannabis Radio. Let's talk more about your thoughts on the cannabis industry. I'm really curious.
I'd love to do that. All right, you got it.
Thank you so much.
You got it, man.
that'll do it for episode 100 of the Broadcasters Podcast. Thank you so much for listening to the show. For all of you that have listened through every episode, I am so grateful to all of you. And I'd love to have the opportunity to thank you personally if I ever get the chance to. Meantime, we'll leave it right there. I have another interview all set up for next week. And the next 2 weeks, I'll have sportscasting legendary sportscaster extraordinaire, Ann Ligori. She'll be joining me on the program over the next 2 weeks. We have a great interview lined up for that. Really enjoyed my conversation with Ann. I'll have that for you coming up next week here on the Broadcasters Podcast. Until then, thanks for listening to episode 100. Remember, content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast, presented by broadcasterspodcast.com and kingofpodcasts.com. The Broadcasters Podcast is brought to you by kingofpodcasts.com/Amazon. If Amazon is good enough for the King of Podcasts, it most certainly is good for you. kingofpodcasts.com/Amazon. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program. The Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at kingofpodcasts.com.